Well, I spent most time on the Longships, and we had the old man at the Longships, which was a huge boulder that used to rattle around underneath you. And he caused more vibration than the sea, I think. Because when I arrived there and we had our first gale, Ron Smith said, "Don't worry about the noise," he said, "it's only the old man." And he used to bounce about underneath us, and the tower used to go up and down and vibrate, you know. But the boys say on the Bishop Rock and the Wolf, they used to get a buzzing in the ears through the compressed air of the sea coming up around them. I can't remember that. All I can remember on the Longships is being shaken and the old man banging around down below. We were young then, we didn't worry about it. But it was a dicey place, the Longships. I think it was Ron who was down there with a mate, wasn't it? And perfectly flat sea, and both sunbathing, both had life jackets, I think. And yet Teddy Barnes was taken away. Well, Ron heard the sea coming and stood up and said, "Teddy, make for the door." But it was too late, Ted had gone. So we never went downstairs on the Longships without a life jacket or a rope, you know. And of course you never went down below the Bishop Rock or the Wolf.
I was then sent off to the Longships, which suited the dear lady very well, because then we had a accommodation on shore, overlooking the lighthouse, 1.5 miles away. So the cottages overlooking the lighthouse, we could keep in contact. It was in the days before radio, of course, and we had radio for ship-to-shore facilities, but there was no way the ladies could communicate with us other than by semaphore. So all the ladies had to learn semaphore then. So hanging out of the living room window with a pair of black flags against the white building, and in the afternoon when the sun was full on the building, it was quite easy to read the semaphore using the station telescope, and we answered back using the station radio on the what used to be known as trawler band. Visited Land's End Radio one day, and the superintendent there, he said, "We get asked to keep a check on the Trinity House frequencies," he said, "and we hear you chatting sometimes," he said, "but we've been up and down all the bands, but we can never find out which frequency the person at the other end is transmitting on." I said, "Well, you won't, it's by semaphore, innit?" "Oh," he said, "you crafty persons." Well, words to that effect. So it was surprising how good the ladies used to become. There was only one problem once, I think, was when my dear lady had to go take one of the children to hospital, and the next door neighbour decided that she would tell me that the wife wasn't in, and she decided to send the message via semaphore. The only problem was that she learnt it by looking at herself in the wardrobe mirror. So of course when she started sending semaphore, it was backwards way about. Whereas we normally send the letter G, she was sending the letter A. So of course I had to sort of try and read this then in reverse. It took me quite a while before I fathomed it out, that what she was doing. But as her husband had learned how to read her sending in reverse, he had no problems with it, but the rest of us did.
What about storms in a lighthouse?
Oh, goodness gracious, yes. The first time you go on to a rock station, a tower station especially, and you experience a storm, you think that, my goodness, what have you let yourself in for? A lot of people ask, do their lighthouses sway? No, they don't sway, but they do vibrate naturally. You get a shock wave if you get a really big humping waves hitting you. You get a shock wave going through the tower, and you can see this in effect when you've got your pot of tea on the table and you can see the ripples in the tea. You know that the lighthouse is actually vibrating, but there's no swinging or swaying of the lighthouse, but it can be a bit hair-raising. My first time when I saw really strong seas was at the Longships, and looking out there to the west and a full moon blowing, a clear sky, magnificent seas rolling in there. First of all the sea is black, then it takes on a sort of a bluish green hue, and then you're looking at the moon shining through it, a full moon shining through it as well. And then it starts to break and it's coming straight at you. And you're looking out of the lantern, and the next thing the whole lantern is washed with white foam. And you think to yourself, I'm 110 feet above sea level here. It's been here a lot longer than I have. Probably it'll stay up a little bit longer than when I've gone. It's still there yet, but it does cause problems sometimes. One of the things that happened on the Longships many years back, there was big seas coming in there. I was in the service room watching the waves and listening to then heard one God Almighty crash down below somewhere, and thought, now what's happened? So I went down and got to the kitchen level and saw water coming out under the kitchen door. I thought, oh dear, the windows have been burst in. When you think of a lighthouse window on a tower rock, the inner window could be 2 feet or more away from the outer storm shutters. The storm shutters are made of solid bronze with only a very small thick glass window in it. They're usually bolted down. The inside windows are closed up and screwed shut. The seas had not only burst in the storm shutters, but it had stripped the threads on the screws of the inner windows, and the 2 windows in the kitchen at the same time burst in, and the sea came in with it. Now then, how to get in and mop out, because the lino was now about 3 inches above the level of the base of the door. The seas are continuing to come through the window, and you've got to try and open the door in order to stop it from doing so. So 101 uses for a plastic ruler. Well, that was one. Sort of get the ruler underneath the door as far as you can, heave the lino down a little bit, lever the lino down as much as you can in order to get the door open a fraction, and then start from there.
We're in the base of the tower, and that pole in front of us is hollow. That used to have the weight coming down from the top of the tower on a chain, which drove the lens around by clockwork.
Right, we're now on the service room level, which is the level just below the lens. The room is still dominated by the green tube, and then the cupboard that's made to fit the curve of the wall, which most lighthouses had. That bell on the green tube rang just before the weight got to the bottom, but no keeper would let that happen, and he would be winding the thing up long before. Now we come to the steepest flight in the lighthouse, up to the lantern, all the nice brass that keepers are famous for polishing. Up into the lantern room, walking round the lens. There's things on the wall there are the vents that used to be for when the light was oil fired. This is part of the mechanism that drives the lens around. Underneath you now have 2 electric motors, one on, one as standby. And these are the controls for the main light. Lantern up in front of you floats on a trough of mercury. In the lens you have 2 bulbs, one on, one as standby, and the acetylene gas emergency light. So you have one bulb on. If that fails, it flicks around to the next one and lights it. If that fails, then it's the emergency gas. And this is a close-up of the gas burner. And this is the chain that hangs down the tower with the weights, or used to. It's now, as I said, the electric motors. We now go across to the engine room, and there's the 2 trumpets sticking out the roof. The engine in front of you is the standby diesel generator if the main should fail. Behind it is the siren foghorn, and then as you swing right you've got 2 diesel compressors, one on, one as standby for the foghorn. Controls for the standby diesel, and this is one of the diesel compressors, and that's the other side of it. Just different views of the compressors in the building. And here you have the fog signal control panel, and this is the actual siren foghorn with the twin turrets going up through the roof. Normally you power up the compressor and it pumps air into these 2 tanks, there's one behind the other, and when it reaches a certain PSI, pounds per square inch, that's when you let the foghorn do its job.